Hey y'all, welcome back to Adventuring with Amanda. Thank you so much for being here. If you are new to my channel, welcome. It's a bit windy today, but it's beautiful, a gorgeous day. And I was actually working on my frequently asked questions video that you all have helped me essentially put together. But I decided to make a video out of one question, and that's how I started van life. And I'm going to give you the simple rundown of how I started van life and why I think that you should start as well and try, because I've been getting a lot of comments like, Amanda, I really want to start van life. You inspire me to do it. I'm afraid, or I want to jump right in, whatever. Um, so I'm going to talk about that as well. And we're just going to chat about how I started. So like this video and subscribe to my channel if you are new here, because we talk about van life and traveling with dogs. And I need to open my notes here to make sure that I don't forget anything. So I started van life in June of 2020, and there are three factors that really got me started on my journey. And honestly, my vision for unconventional living started when I was very, very young. By the time I was 5 years old, I knew that I wanted to live in an RV. That's what I wanted to do. Ever since I was 5, I wanted to live in an RV. And my whole life, I grew up knowing that I was unconventional and I wasn't mainstream. And I tried the whole live in suburbia, in a big house with lots of cars and the American dream. Oh yeah, totally did that. Was completely 100% miserable, but thankfully I got it out of the way in my 20s. So I graduated college and I did all of the things that millennials were told we were supposed to do. And by the time I was 30, I was divorced. And that is probably the main thing that jump started my van life. In January of 2020, my divorce was final. And then 2 months later, in March of 2020, my stepdad died of cancer. He was only in his 60s. And then a month later, on April 27th, 2020, which actually the anniversary is tomorrow, which is also my mom's birthday, Winston got attacked and ripped in half and underwent 2 life-saving surgeries. So after all of those things, I was like, holy crap, life is really short. I'm going to start van life. So when Winston was still recovering in June of 2020, and granted, we all remember what happened in 2020, right? The good old vid hit the world and shit hit the fan. So it was the perfect time for me to just say, screw it, I'm going to start van life, especially because I was working remotely as a writer at that point. I had been working remotely as a writer for 8 years, so I was already set to work on the road, which made the transition a heck of a lot easier. And I was living in an apartment at the time. So I actually found my first van, which was a 2011 Dodge Grand Caravan. It was maroon and it had a ton of cosmetic damage on the outside, but it had 115,000 miles on it, and it was fantastic inside and the perfect vehicle for me to start my van life journey. I purchased it for $3,500 on OfferUp from somebody local in the Phoenix area. So I got lucky finding my first van, and it was really great for me. Now, I didn't do a ton of research. I watched 2 channels, and that's Cheap RV Living with Bob Wells and My Basic Journey, Chantel and Joey. You guys know them. Chantel was my first minivan inspiration. She taught me that I could camp and live in a minivan with a dog. And now we're really good friends. So it's kind of funny how it all worked out. And I was on Bob Wells' channel years ago with my red van. So everything kind of came full circle. But I didn't do a ton of research because I'm not an overthinker. Honestly, I was like, I got my van. I'm going to start simple and go. So I purchased my van it was June 19th of 2020. And about not even a month later, I was headed to Idaho on my first van life trip. And I was going to meet my friends Juliet and Jessica. And we stayed at a campground, And that was the perfect van life trip. I drove pretty far, but I had been driving around the country already in my Honda Fit for a couple years with Winston by then. So the drive didn't bother me. But we stayed at a campground, which was nice. And I was with my girlfriend, so I wasn't completely alone. And I learned a lot on that trip. I think we were there for 5 days or so. And I remember my biggest takeaways were I need to figure out how to shave my legs and I need to figure out a better shower solution. So those were like my big two things. I'll never forget. I'll never forget that. So even though we were staying at a campground, we couldn't use the public facilities because they were closed down due to COVID. And that was a wonderful first trip. Now, what I'm going to say, my main advice for people who are starting is don't overthink it and don't overbuy. So many people go and they spend all of this money on all of these things when you don't really know what you are going to need personally. Because I might use a lot of stuff that doesn't suit you. You might see a lot of things on these van channels that just doesn't work for you. I recommend taking ideas and inspiration and really making it your own. But the best way to do that is to go out and to try. So I only have a few things in my van that I've had since the very beginning, one being my mattress. I've had my Milliard trifold mattress for the entire going on 4 years now. I freaking love this thing. But I did have a cot to start. So I had a cot for about a year and a half. I didn't like it, and I'm glad I got rid of it. So I did have a cot, but I didn't even have a fridge. I started with a Yeti cooler, and I started with a Jackery 240. And let's see, I used a 5-gallon bucket. I had just very, really minimal items. I figured I would just kind of get the bare minimum to get the experience, and then I would build upon that. And I did. And honestly, it's a constant learning process, especially because I went from doing like a van life trip here and there, maybe a couple nights, 3 nights, whatever, to now living in my minivan 90% of the time. So your needs change based on how your journey changes and progresses. So yeah, it looks like actually I covered everything that was on that list, so that's good. So start with weekend trips. If you're nervous, start in like your driveway or a friend's driveway or campgrounds. I used to use campgrounds a lot more often because it gave me a sense of security since I was still new to van life, and I had like water and showers and electric hookups if I needed them. That really helped me solidify my confidence. And now it's very rare I stay at a campground. I'll only stay at a campground if like I'm east of Texas, because BLM and National Forest land is like super hard to come by free camping. Or like if I'm traveling extensively and I need a little bit of a break. So I started van life with Winston in my $3,500 van with very minimal items, and I built up. And this is where I'm at now. I spent my first winter camping in Quartzsite that fall, I suppose, fall of 2020, and I've been going ever since. Besides, starting simple and not overthinking it, like I said, you really just need to get out and do it. You can do all of the research that you could possibly do until, you know, 3 a.m. every night. But it's not the same as getting the experience. The experience is key. Don't spend a ton of money. Don't put so much anxiety and stress into the process when you could just get in your vehicle and go. You really just need a place to sleep, something to power your electronics, something to put your food in, which honestly, like I said, I started with a Yeti cooler. I wouldn't even invest in a fridge until you know this is something you want to do. Because you might go sleep in a van or a vehicle or your SUV or your truck or whatever and try it for a few trips and be like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely not for me. Oh, and you need a toilet. Don't forget a toilet. You need a toilet. Um, Food, water, shelter, toilet. Those are your basic necessities. Don't overthink it. So I've been in my current Dodge Grand Caravan, which is 2018. I've been in this going on 3 years now, and I plan to run this baby into the ground. Let me tell you what. Life is expensive, fuel is expensive, maintenance is expensive. I cannot imagine having a bigger van than what I do right now. But I am also obsessed with my minivan. I've put so much passion and energy and effort into making this thing my homey little gypsy wagon, and it makes me very, very happy. So I encourage you to try in the vehicle that you're currently in. You don't even necessarily need a new vehicle. You don't need a new minivan. I started in a Honda Fit, so I'm going to tell you, like, that was my first experience car camping, was in a Honda Fit. So I'm going to tell you that whatever vehicle you have, you can do it. So why not? What do you have to lose, right? I mean, what do you really have to lose by trying? So that's my quick little story about how I started van life, what I started with, and I encourage everybody to give it a try who's interested, because, you know, don't be afraid of what could go wrong and start getting excited about what could go right. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Remember to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you are new here. I will see you next time.